Welcome back, everybody. So, it's been a couple more days off and on of building. A few hours here, a few hours there. And, surprise, surprise, more mistakes were made. Still, everything was recoverable, but it has definitely been getting colder in the shop. You can see I've got the heater going out there. The other morning was a lot colder. Anyways, got the 3M wheel out, and I'm just doing some edge prep on the skin. And I realized I should probably be holding that at more of an angle so I don't get grooves in it. My wheel, that is. But little wheel action, some 3N pads, and then a little bit of sandpaper to get the sharp edges off of the little relief corners in there. And then I'm just using the Vixen file there because that one edge that I'm working on is just barely making contact with the counterweight skin when it's on. So I marked that edge so I could just take a small fraction of it down so it won't rub later on when I have to roll the edge over. And now I'm just taking the deburring tool and going along all the edges, getting it all cleaned up. All the holes are deburred and back to dimpling the holes. And at one point I got a little carried away and I ended up dimpling one of the holes for the fiberglass tip, which probably will get dimpled later anyways. I just chose to leave the other side undimpled because I'm not 100% how I want to attach those. Anyhow, I think I mentioned before that I decided I'm not going to fold over the little flap of metal. Instead, I'm going to cut the flaps off, and I've made those little riblets you can see in the foreground on the left there. And I'm going to put a riblet in there, and then eventually fill that in the same way I fill in the other ends with foam and fiberglass and whatnot later. So now I'm just coming up with the best way to cut those flaps off. You saw I went at it with the nibbler and didn't like that. Cleaned it up a little bit with the 3M wheel. Now I'm using a cutoff tool. Surprisingly, that's not really cutting through it very well, but did good enough to score it where I needed. Thought maybe I could go take it over to the disc/belt sander, but I realized that was just going to be a nightmare to clean it up. So best thing I can come up with is the Vixen file. And now I'm just taking it down to the blue line. Apologize if I cough or if I sound a little off. I think I'm starting to get a bit of a cold. It's not helping things. Probably why I'm not thinking clearly while I'm doing some of this too. So, combination of the file and the 3M wheel, you can see the blue line there that I'm working my way towards. And I did end up leaving it just a little long of the blue line. And I figured once the riblet is in there, I can trim both together if need be to get a final fit. So now I'm just using the file again to try and square up the edge and get a nice straight line out of it. I think the tricky part later is going to be getting a matching straight line on the other one, but I think once they're both fiberglassed, I can probably do a little bit of sanding in between the two of those to make the line and the gap look even and straight. At least that's my hope right now. So anyways, I'm done cutting those off. Now it's time to start actually riveting the skeleton together. And you can see I've already primed all of those parts that I prepped in the previous video. And this was just a lot of back and forth with the squeezer to get the right sets in there until I was getting it set the way I wanted it. And now it's the front spar, putting in the hinge doublers, both the front and back, along with the giant nut plates that are going to hold the spherical bearings in. Gratifying when they all set right and they end up looking the way they're supposed to. and they all check good. Alright, so now I'm putting the counterbalance ribs on, getting those squeezed, and there's a couple of tricky spots to get in there. There's the ones on the end, which I could squeeze, but then there's those ones right there, and try as I might, can't get the squeezer in there. So I try with the straight set on the rivet gun, realize that's not going to work, so I use the long offset and the bucking bar. And a little finagling, and I was able to get both of those set. The rib on the opposite end, I forgot to include the video of me setting it, but those were just, I was able to squeeze all 4 of those with the squeezer. And here's the big mistake. Let's see if you can spot it. I'll give you a few seconds, but I'm going to let this whole thing play out. That is the control horn I'm putting on there. And at no point at all did I catch what was going on. In fact, I didn't catch it this day at all. I'm happily putting the rivets in and thrilled to death. They're squeezing nice, and I'm even able to get into that tight over 90 corner right there and get all of those squeezed. And still not even obvious, even though that thing is right in my face, I have riveted that control horn on backwards. That arm is supposed to be sticking out the other way, so when you pull on it, it rotates the elevator up and down. So I'm not going to catch that for a little while, but you'll get a good reaction when when I do finally realize the error of my ways. So now I'm getting set up to back rivet the stiffeners on the skin. I should have probably done this when I did the other side, since I made all the stiffeners at the same time, but I just left them clecoed to it for the time being just to keep them separated. So now I've got them all primed and ready to go, and I was like, nope, that's not the right set to go there. I had them marked top and bottom, but somewhere I lost something in translation. The only real difference between the top and the bottom is one side. The top side has 4 of those little tiny stiffeners you see down at the end, and the bottom side only has 3 because it's got an opening for the trim actuator. So, set them on my back riveting plate, and trying to start from the middle of them this time and work my way out, just to ensure that things stay flat. Probably a practice I should have been doing all along. And just getting all the rivets set, going through, checking them all. I still don't trust my calibrated eyeball yet. Getting better at it, but when in doubt, it's just easy to grab the rivet gauge and check them. Throughout this entire process, that skin was a pain to deal with. This left one is just so floppy, for lack of better terms. It's constantly getting in the way. So another good use of the foot pedal and the squeezer. Put it back in my little vise there, and this time instead of dimpling, I'm using it to set rivets for all of the nut plates on that stiffener that's going around the opening for the trim actuator. It's got, I think, 7 number 6 nut plates around it. And then once those are all set, I went ahead and back riveted that thing in place. Yet somehow I missed a rivet. Not sure. Every assembly so far I have missed a rivet somewhere. And this one, I missed one there, and there's one on, I think, that next stiffener over in the middle of all places. Get my wooden dowel in there, not all of them are on, and get the trailing edge bent down so it'll sit nice in the skeleton. And now it has you take the counterbalance skin, and I'm going to set the 2 inboard rivets on the top and bottom because I'm not going to be able to reach those once the skeleton is in place. So if I want them to be solid rivets, you do it now. And there's the Cure Safe silicone that I've got. A little dab of that in the end of each of those stiffeners is supposed to help later on with fatigue and cracking. I figure it's worth giving it a shot to see if it works. And now in the background you can see me going after the lead counterbalance weight. I'm just taking off the recommended amount to start with, just so I got something to work with before I final it later on when I'm balancing everything, which I don't think that's actually going to get done until everything's painted and all of that. But they give you measurements on the plans to cut off, and I found the best tool for it is just that carpenter's crosscut saw. Nice Nice big tooth, works pretty good. Countersink the holes for the weight, and then go ahead and install that and put the 2 bolts in that are going to hold that in place. And from that moment on, the elevator gets a whole lot more awkward to handle because you got that big weight hanging on the end of it. So now I can get to clecoing the rest of the skin to all of the substructure there. And a little finagling and some shimmying around, and you can still see that end is still flopping around. Grateful when I finally was able to get it riveted. So now I am on the bottom side, and I am, yep, I figured out there's a rivet down there that I missed. Still haven't noticed that control horn is backwards yet. Those were easy enough to get. Couldn't squeeze that one in the stiffener, so I just got to get the flush set out, and or the mushroom set and the bucking bar, and that was easy enough to deal with. Thinking that I've got everything behind me, I'm going to go through and start filling every other hole with rivets, and then I'll go along with the squeezer and squeeze them all down. So I've got that control horn right in my face right there, and I still haven't noticed it. Yet I'm committing to riveting the skin on. Oh yeah, I felt so stupid. Right now though, I'm happy. Everything's going well. Nothing's being squeezed crooked. Nothing needs to be drilled out. Everything's sitting nice and flush. So I'm pulling all of those clecos out, and now I'm going to go fill every other hole with rivets. And then I'll go along and start squeezing those. And right about there, yep, nothing I can do except laugh about it, because, yep, that control horn is pointed at me and it should be pointed to the side. And I've committed to riveting down that part of the skin. So I needed to take a pause for the cause. I thought I turned the camera back on for the fix, but I didn't. So as you can see, the control horn is now pointed the right way. Since the other side of the skin was not riveted on yet, I was able to flip it over, drill out the rivets holding the control horn on as carefully as I could. Thankfully I didn't make any holes bigger. Repositioned it, and since I could get good access the one time that the floppiness of the elevator skin came in handy, I was able to reach all of those rivets with the squeezer from the one open side, and thankfully get them all squeezed with the control horn in the right orientation. More lessons learned. So now I am working on that cutout I made for the little riblet that I made. I have marked a center line of where the flange is going to be, measured out where I want my 3 rivets. I just tried to approximate the rivet spacing on the rest of it so it all looks like it belongs there. And I am just dimpling the holes that I just made in the riblet itself. And now I'm going to go dimple and prep the holes that I just made in the skin. Deburr them. And there they are. You can see the line I drew. They're all dimpled and ready to go. So back to riveting the skin together. Unfortunately, this is going to be the last of the build again for a little while, because tomorrow I'm going back out to California for a couple of weeks of work, so I won't be able to work on the elevator trim tab, unfortunately. So there'll be a little bit of a break, and then I'll be back at it again. But if you're just now getting here, there's plenty of other videos to go back and look at so far. You can laugh at all of my mistakes. Hopefully learn from them. Yep. And now just squeezing the rest of them. So now the aft spar is going in, and for now only the bottom half of that gets riveted in. The top half doesn't get done until I put the hinge on for the trim tab later. And the nice thing about making the riblet and not having a folded tab there is I can actually get in and reach 2 of the 4 holes I wouldn't normally be able to reach that called for pulled rivets. So at least 2 more of them are going to be solid, and then there's 2 I just can't reach on that rear spar, and those are going to be filled with pull rivets. But it's only 2 of them. They're going to be real hard to find. And the plans call for 4, so I think I'm good. So you can see my little riblet sitting there in front of my rivet tray. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to grab that thing and get it clecoed and installed. The only tricky part, I could get the 2 front rivets, but the trailing edge ones too tight of a space to squeeze, so I had to do the same thing I did on the trailing edge of the 703 rib, which is use a little makeshift bucking bar and the rivet gun to get them set. And it came out pretty good. It'd probably be better if they were squeezed, but good enough, especially considering that's not a structural part really in any way, shape, or form. It's just there acting as a closeout. So there it is, riveted in place. There's a little side profile. I think it came out pretty good. I guess I inserted those pictures a little too soon. You can see me actually finishing it there. But that's it. Wipe it all down. Final picture of what I've got done so far completed. And that's it. If you got any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below, and I'll see you on the next one.